Stress, struggle, and suffering. They are the prison of your own mind. This content is to set you free by deconstructing the lies that keep you stuck. But the truth can be triggering. Watch at your own risk.
Last week, in our rather painful Truth About Sex, we learned why happy ever after is a lottery ticket and why we're destined not to be sexually satisfied. But here is the thing. Do we really have to be sexually satisfied? Where does the sexual craze come from? Why do we buy into it? Oh, you will be surprised. This gets ugly. Buckle up.
Unbound mind.
All right, let's drop a nasty sex bomb to let the truth out. Hormones drive the innate biological imperative for sex. They mess up with us when we go through adolescence, when we're in love, and then in the mornings for men and once a month for women. Sure, they give us those obvious surges, but this is as far as it goes. Yes, we also have individual predispositions. Do you remember we had that weird female-dominated segment of respondents thinking they're super duper sexy, dreaming of rough experiments, yet looking for intimacy and having none of it? I would presume that they may share some hysteroid character traits, just in case. This thing is called character accentuation, and it isn't pathology. So, they exaggerate emotional and sexual display as a standout driven performance. As such, their vibrant, seductive appearance and behavior serve a singular ego function to attract attention and validation, often called narcissistic supply. They dress provocatively or flirt excessively in an attempt to secure the attention of others. The win occurs the moment the person is noticed, desired, and approved of. Once the attention is secured, the actual sexual encounter becomes a shallow formality. And this is why you may have heard of or have known women or men who seem to promise great sex and appear to be complete disappointment in practice. At the same time, people with low sex drive may share schizoid character traits, again, not a pathology. Unlike an avoidant person who wants intimacy but fears it, and we definitely saw those in our study too, the schizoid-style individuals genuinely prefer their inner world to the hustle of emotional connection. Actually, you know who else prefers their inner world to the hustle of sexual encounters? Gen Zs. And this brings us to an interesting observation. Have you ever thought that our sex drive isn't quite driven by biology, but by external conditioning? Depending on what you accept as your beliefs, the strength of your drive will reflect them. Starting with Gen Zs, since we have already mentioned them. It's a well-known fact that young people are increasingly choosing to delay or abstain from sex and relationships. Health risks, stress, financial, societal, and media pressures, all this is to blame. Instead, they're prioritizing self-improvement, personal growth, and healthy connections, and I guess it's one way to channel one's circadian rhythm. Young people in Japan and South Korea are giving up on dating, marriage, and children. They blame long working hours, societal expectations, and financial pressures. So, no news here. For example, in Japan, 42% of men and 44% of women aged 18 to 34 are still virgins. Then, a sexual and aromantic movement is a growing, vocal, what a surprise, every time there is a movement, we expect it to be vocal, community defining itself by a lack of intrinsic sexual and romantic drive. Then there are people from conservative and religious families or communities who aren't exposed to the sexualization of every freaking live moment and who actually manage to survive without much sex, regardless of their physiology. And there are monks. Although their reputation is pretty screwed, still, there are many more monks in honest celibacy than those involved in scandals. You see what I'm trying to say? All this proves that physiology isn't the main sex driver, although it's supposed to be. Or at least it can be tamed or channeled, and I'm not even talking about Neigong or Tantra practices. So, if it isn't physiology, what is it?
Unbound mind.
How about the sexual revolution in the 60s? Or surge of sexual advertising and sexualized performances in the 90s and 2000s, coming from the most aspirational brands from within the MTV, tobacco, spirits, and luxury goods industries. This is, by the way, when we learned that sex sells, maybe even better than luxury goods themselves. And then, from artsy, tasteful, and sophisticated creative executions, it turned into OnlyFans and create economy, ouch, a profitable commodification of sexual appeal where sex itself becomes a business model. And then there is a divine feminine that rebrands sacred sexuality as a spiritual quest for empowerment and goddess status. And hyper-feminine pygmies with their overt, often exaggerated performance of traditional gender roles. Speaking of traditional gender roles, how about societies where male dominance, violence, infidelity, and lack of accountability aren't just tolerated, they are state-sponsored ideology, when a culture not only rewards men for misbehaving, but turns it into a sign of raw masculinity, a badge of honor. And to spice things up, there is also Tinder. So, what do all these groups with a so-called hypertrophied sex drive have in common? The easy answer is culture. Society gives them a script, and they are all responding to a cultural script that teaches them the right way to behave, even though it's obviously wrong. And when I say wrong, I don't mean morals, I mean being harmful. But that can't be the whole story. After all, not everybody with the same biology, exposed to the same cultural narrative, behaves in the exact same way. Culture isn't the root cause, it's just an amplifier. There has to be something else. How about ego-driven self-worth? And now we're talking. This is an interesting idea, isn't it? When the ego takes over, sex stops being a physiological necessity, but becomes a way to compensate for low self-worth or validate the inflated one. It becomes driven by the need to belong, the need for attention, the hunt for a confidence boost, or the shield against oneself. Basically, ego-driven self-worth hijacks the biological drive, gets amplified by the cultural narrative, and sex becomes the tool to escape yourself and your reality, or even to escape the boredom that is often just a cover-up for existential absence. And now it stops being glamorous, doesn't it? And when these trends, seemingly harmless, collide with an ego built on pathological self-worth, they become disastrous. Tinder doesn't just turn sex into a commodity. It trains you to use hormonal spikes as a thinking mechanism. It's one of the main drivers of a narcissistic culture a killer of empathy. Yes, ghosting. Basically, it helps develop narcissistic traits amongst otherwise relatively normal individuals. Jai. Now, this doesn't mean everyone on a dating app is a narcissist, but it just means that such platforms are amplifiers for naughty behaviors. Sadly, this system actually applies to both sides of the spectrum. For those with inflated self-worth, with grandiose roles like the alpha or the perfect catch, such cultural trends offer endless, effortless confirmation. The quick gratification cycle accelerates their existing narcissistic tendencies. It becomes standard to objectify partners, engage in emotional detachment, and use others purely as tools to feed egos. And if we apply the same cultural narrative of sexual dominance and commodification to victimized, deep-seated insecurities or glorified patriarchy, we welcome toxic masculinity and the birth of incels, those who measure their self-worth by sexual dominance, opening the door to abuse. This is where narcissistic traits can actually border on psychopathy. Besides, the sheer volume of superficiality further devalues our self-worth, not only through meaningless encounters, but through imposing an impossible sense of physical inadequacy, either in performance or appearance. And still, it's all outside of what we'd even call criminal offense. But genuinely pathological individuals have always existed. A culture of sexual paranoia like ours simply gives them more opportunities to act.
Unbound Mind.
All right, enough of pathology. Let's go back to cheating partners, those from part 1. There are a couple of biological theories. One is about sperm being cheap and numerous, and the other is about reproductive benefits from seeking more partners. Well, they don't stand up to any critique, as they don't explain the behavior, nor do they allow for exceptions, even as large as the whole opposite sex. So, next time you come across the evolutionary theory that stipulates that the male role is to create as many offspring as possible, well, it's an excuse or wishful thinking for potential offspring creators. Don't buy into it. But what you can buy into is the data cited by Dr. David Buss that proves that women's affairs are often driven by relationship dissatisfaction. Fair enough. While men's infidelity is primarily motivated by a desire for sexual variety, and we're back to the ego. Only this time, it's backed by a profound lack of consciousness, moral reasoning, and responsibility for one's own choices. Oops. So, that's the one. But at the end of the last video, I promised you a way out. I showed you a brutal map, especially for women, where choices looked like a menu of despair: get cheated on, submit to a dominant partner, or settle for a passionless and sexless life. You see, the trap is thinking the way out is to find a better partner or a different spot on the map. That's still looking for an external solution. The real way out is not to change the map, it's to become a different navigator. The kind of person for whom that menu of despair is simply unacceptable. A person whose self-worth isn't tied to the need to belong. A person whose ego isn't defined by relationship status, even when an ideology demands it. A person who has the emotional and financial sovereignty to walk away from the situation that doesn't serve them. You don't change the rules of a rigged game. Otherwise, it wouldn't be rigged, right? You become the player who can thrive regardless. And that power doesn't come from your partner, or your status, or your sex life. It comes from the difficult, necessary work of taming your expectations, building an unshakable sense of self, and giving it high value. And this isn't just about women escaping a bad map. For the men caught in this ego-driven game, the prison just has different bars. Actually, think of it. It must be a lonely place where your value is tied to a scoreboard of meaningless encounters, a stressful, constant pressure to perform, to prove your worth, and to reinflate an ego that's always sinking. Both sides trapped in a rigged game where the only real prize is self-damage. But for everyone, the way out is the same. You own the choice and you own the consequences. And if you find uncovering the truth about sex valuable, well, hopefully, I will be happy to welcome you in the next video series where we'll uncover the truth behind your stress, struggle, and suffering. And it isn't what you think, and definitely not what society tells you.